Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FTX podcast. It's really great to have here with me a friend and a colleague, Sina Nader. Welcome, Sina.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you on, man. For those that may not know you already from the Twitter sphere and other places, would you mind giving a brief intro of yourself?
Sure. So I'm Sina Nader, head of partnerships here at FTX US. Previously was the first head of crypto at Robinhood. Before that, co-founded one of the first fund of funds in the crypto space. And then before that, kind of started my career on Wall Street at Morgan Stanley and then Credit Suisse.
Cool. How did you get into crypto? How did that transition go from Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse into crypto? Seems like a pretty big change.
It's a great question, and it's something I've been giving a lot of thought to with everything that's going on. But anyway, I mean, the long and the short is that Wall Street kind of pushed me into crypto, and the reason I say that is because after I don't know half a decade or something on Wall Street, like I sort of got allergic. I became allergic to some of the things that I saw there, but I didn't know like what the solution was to it. I'm just like, I kind of don't like these things, but what do I do about it? And then I sort of heard whispers of this thing called Bitcoin actually in 2010, and people sending electronic money or this new type of electronic money. I didn't pay as much attention as I wish I would have in 2010. But in 2013, a cousin of mine basically said, "Hey, Sina, you really need to check out this Bitcoin thing." And I did. And because I'm not a technical person, I can't code. I'm like, well, let me talk to some buddies that can code and like see what they think about it. And like pretty much everyone I asked, they're like, this seems actually really elegant and really interesting. And then I sort of kind of tripped and fell down the rabbit hole from there.
But what's really interesting is I think, especially then, I mean, less so now because the reputational risk is sort of been mostly removed. But I think back then for a banker to consider anything like Bitcoin interesting was almost like blasphemy to some degree. So I'm curious, like, what do you attribute having that open-mindedness to?
Wow, that is a great question. I mean, honestly, probably if I'm gonna, really think about it, I would probably say great teachers. I'm reminded of one of my favorite professors in undergrad, a lady named Dr. Weston, who said that the purpose of higher education is to show you, not to teach you, but to show you that you already know what you need to know. And she differentiated between what I might want to know versus what I need to know. And I say that because in your gut, you just know when something is right or something isn't right. And some of the just kind of endemically sort of across the board, something just didn't feel right to me. And just kind of hearkening back to what this, Dr. Weston said to me, if I already know what I need to know, then something tells me that something isn't right here. And that's kind of all I needed. And just having like an awareness of that, I guess made me somehow karmically or something like open to seeing what else might be out there. And sure enough, this sort of crypto thing came along. Took a few years for me to put it all together, but I think I would probably trace it back to just being fortunate to have good teachers and then like listening to what they say.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. That's awesome. It's so true to have a good professor, even in school as well, can change everything. Something I'm curious about, something I'm going to ask you for sort of across your career trajectory is culture. It's like this culture in different workspaces. And I'd be really curious to start actually with the banking space and what the culture was like there for you and what you thought of it at the time, perhaps what you think of it now.
Wow. Also amazing questions. I mean, at the time it was very impressive to me. It was sort of my introduction to the way that money works, and sort of the dance that happens between providers of capital and users of capital. Just learning about that, observing it from 40,000 feet, and then sort of taking steps kind of in that direction, helping people do things with their money, and sort of understanding the range of things that they could do and the range of things that a bank could help provide. And it's a significant list. I mean, they can, banks can and do help people do a lot of things. And they've got a lot of experience doing that, 100 plus years of experience. So they do some things quite well. And it was nice to see that and nice to sort of participate in that, for a number of years, and sort of learn their process and learn their structure and their way of thinking. That's one of the things, just sort of the organization that it takes to run a global bank. It's pretty impressive. And so that was kind of one of the things that I learned, or one of sort of my observations. As I kind of look back on it, I guess my hope for the banking industry would have been that they put the customer first a little bit more. And so rather than sort of having a profit maximizing motive for the firm as kind of the North Star, maybe it could be about the individuals, the customers, sort of first and foremost. That would be my sort of hope. But just really impressive with basically leading the way, because there's no alternative. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, before crypto came around, like, what are your choices, right? Like, if you want to do significant financial transactions, you're kind of, you have no other choice, right?
Yep.
Until some other choices come around.
No, totally. That makes a lot of sense. And then from there, from this sort of large organization, this large structure that's allowing all this flowing of money around the world, how did you then decide to pivot into crypto as far as career-wise?
Yeah. So when I had that sort of moment of realizing that, if I'm understanding this, this whole thing correctly, that what we're actually talking about is a form of communication. And we're talking about communicating value, right? Like, when I send you a Bitcoin or you send me some Solana or whatever, like, we're communicating that we value our relationship or whatever thing that happened by that amount, right? So if you look at it from the lens of communication, that, in my opinion, opens up a lot of different sort of ways of thinking about it. When I had that moment of kind of figuring that out, then I said, okay, well, I want to be involved. And if this thing is going to change the trajectory of the way that humans do commerce, like, that's huge. And that's a multi-year, multi-decade thing. And like, I mean, it's kind of like the internet's coming to, imagine like when the internet was just starting. And when you start to get kind of hints of like, wow, this could really change the world. That's kind of like, I had that same feeling. But I realized that, well, I'm not a coder. So that's out. I can't go build a protocol. And I can trade, but I wouldn't consider myself a trader. So that's kind of out. So then what can I do? Well, I kind of landed on this concept of a fund of funds, which basically, meant I could go out and try to find the traders and find the people that could invest and find the people that understood the protocols at a deeply technical level, and try to, place bets and do well there. So basically kind of realized that the fund of funds model provided an opportunity for someone like me, who's not a technical person and not a trader, to get involved in the space.
And what was the space like back then? I mean, it's changed tremendously.
Oh my gosh! Well, you've had a lot of guests on the podcast that could probably talk even better, with even more colorful examples than I can. But gosh, it was, I mean, totally different. Like, it was like a bunch of friends talking about something that they're like excited about, almost like you're talking about like a sports team or something like that. They're like, oh, did you see that penalty kick? Or like oh my gosh, that touchdown was amazing, and like that kind of vibe. And now I feel like it's a little bit more, I don't know. There's kind of like there's sort of just a different vibe to it now. But it was definitely smaller. It was definitely more kind of like weird people on the periphery of stuff, right? And it's great to see now that it's more widely accepted. And I mean, you go from like the nerds or like the weird people in the corner of the room talking about it to JP Morgan now recommending an allocation to crypto for all of their investors, I believe, for all their customers. So I mean, the arc from those two, from like nerds off in the corner to JP Morgan suggesting it to everyone, that just seeing that change has been just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I also love that so many of these nerds were able to get incredibly wealthy because of their conviction and their like early beliefs in the system, which I think is really, it's very unique to most things that have happened in history, where you could, because I feel like in the internet boom, a bunch of people made a ton of money, but they just built companies that did really well. In this case, somebody could just throw some money to something they had conviction on, not sell, and then all of a sudden they're pretty set.
Well, I'll tell you a story of a kid that I heard about. So I was pitching crypto to this guy in San Francisco in like, I don't know, 2017. And he told me about his son's college roommate, who, when he started college, took $25,000 and put it all in Bitcoin. And when he graduated 4 years later, that 25,000 was worth $47 million. And so the kid like graduated and retired on the same day. So I mean, yeah, these types of things happen. But I guess I'm reminded of something that I think Bill Gates said, which is like, be nice to the nerds in high school. You might end up working for them one day.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, and also I really think one of the beauties of crypto is that intelligence and talent are sort of the most important factors to growth in the industry. It's so young and fresh that those like ties of nepotism don't really exist yet. It's like quite a beautiful thing.
Very interesting that you said yet, and that's something that I think that we, as people in the crypto space, we need to like be on the lookout for, so that we don't end up basically replicating Wall Street. But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, like it's a blank slate, and like we started from scratch, and it's super exciting in terms of where we can go.
And then how did you go from this fund of funds to was it Robinhood was the next jump? How
Yep.
did that transition happen?
Oh, I mean, basically, they kind of came knocking and said, "Hey, we would like somebody to lead our crypto division. Would you be interested?" And I sort of had to ask myself, like, okay, like I'm a crypto person. Like my goal is to have more people in crypto. Um, can I really move the needle there more with my little, 4 or 5 person, fund of funds, or can I do it by joining a place with like hundreds of engineers and like, lots of funding and, millions of customers? And I kind of had to say, well, I guess I should, if my goal is to try to bring crypto to more people, that seems like a bigger like launching pad than what I currently have. So that was my sort of thought process. And yeah, I mean, getting there, it was great. I mean, a very talented group of people there, and kind of realized that there was a lot of things that needed to sort of be revisited in their crypto platform, and was happy and fortunate to be able to help them sort of solidify, stabilize things, and kind of like revamp their custody, process, and look at their sort of liquidity programs and so forth, and really get things stabilized and ready for the next phase of growth. So it was a pretty rewarding experience in that regard.
And what was it like to, come to this tech company that had always just worked in stocks and wasn't familiar with crypto and try and share this crypto message? Were people receptive? Was it hard?
Yes, all of the above. I mean, people were receptive and it was hard. And so there were many people in the company that were like super excited about crypto, and including the founders. And they wanted to see more and more things happen. At the same time, there were some people that were not as familiar with it and kind of like a little bit concerned about, okay, well, how does this fit into everything else, and how does this work? Does this affect any other things in terms of like our plans to go public, for example, because they hadn't gone public yet at the time. And but by and large, people were supportive and interested and just kind of like open-minded and wanting to learn more. And so my job was kind of I guess twofold. One is to kind of like stabilize the system, and two is to basically be an evangelist and sort of get people more and more interested in the space. And I'm happy to have sort of moved things in that direction. And they sort of kind of, from what it seems, sort of took the ball and ran with it, and grew their platform a bit thereafter.
And what was the culture like at that company? It was, from if I recall around that time, it was pretty much blitz scaling. They were hiring like crazy. They had just raised a ton of money. What was the culture like?
Um, it was amazing. It was before, or I should say, until I had joined FTX, that was the fastest environment that I had seen. They were executing very quickly, and just shipping, updates and shipping, new product pretty constantly. Very collegial, very supportive of each other, and a lot of, I would say, organizational empathy, which I found to be quite nice and kind of refreshing. And just a bunch of really, really smart people, and they were all animated and motivated by this mission, which is a big part of why I joined, and because the message of democratizing finance for all, that really deeply resonated with me, and I think a lot of people there. So that was kind of, you had a lot of people, a lot of really smart people, animated by this like goal of democratizing finance for people, and so a lot of the culture kind of flowed from there.
And what do you think your biggest takeaways were from Robinhood, or things that have stuck with you?
It's great to work with great people, and I feel like all organizations have really awesome people in them, and if you can be fortunate to work with them, it's a delight. Being super dedicated to what you're working on, I think, is also one of the key things. I mean, I remember getting calls at like 2, 3 in the morning if the crypto platform was down. Like, okay, let's get up. We got a war room ready. Let's go. Like, just being super focused, super dedicated, like 24/7. And also the importance of having a mission that people really believe in. That, I think, will get the extra effort and get the extra, I don't know, X factor out of people that you might not see if it's purely, like, let's say, profit driven.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I guess that's a good segue into FTX, because that seems like a good preparation on how the FTX work culture sort of is. And I'd be curious because you joined FTX US and you've done a lot with like validating FTX US as a company over the 2 years now, I think. And I'd be curious to hear like how you see FTX US and this mission that you see behind it.
It's a great question. I mean, you said it best. I mean, you said it was Robinhood was a great preparation for this, and I think that's exactly right. The culture here, in terms of not just wanting to give back, but like to do so in the biggest possible way that we can, that I think is so energizing and so invigorating for me, that it's like, okay, all this like hard work, all this stuff that we're doing, all this effort that we're putting in, well, at the end of the day, what's it for? We're actually seeing that it's for trying to make the world a better place and trying to work on these really big, complex problems, like malaria, like climate change, like, I mean, the next pandemic, or being prepared for the next pandemic, which invariably will come. These types of things are so rewarding to think about, that, oh, all the stuff that we're doing today is helping to sort of make some positive contribution in that direction in the future. So it is, I guess it's been validating in another sense, that it has sort of validated my sense that when you have something bigger than yourself to work on, and when you're working on something that you feel can make a really big impact, that's going to get a lot more out of you than you would probably otherwise get. And I'm actually reminded of something that we spoke about with a guest on the podcast, I think the last time that I was on, with Avichal Garg from Electric Capital, who said that, I think he said his thesis is that people can do like 100x more than they think they can. That, I think, is the TLDR of what I have learned so far at FTX is, yeah, I could probably do 100x of what I previously thought that I could do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it was a little bit less obvious because I didn't come from sort of like these pretty stressful background that you had come from, but it's so true. It just like squeezes the juice out of you in the best way possible.
Exactly. In the best way possible. Totally agree.
And what's your sort of ideal of, like, where would you love FTX US to go? Where would you love to see it? What's the place you would like it to be? What would you like it to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was the first full-time hire, if not, I was like the first or second full-time hire. And at the time, like, it was sort of nebulous to sort of picture what things could look like. I'm so happy to see where we are now and sort of the way that we've been steadily climbing and steadily executing. I think basically more of that, just continuing to focus on the product, continuing to focus on how we can add the most value for our customers, and doing it in a fully compliant way at all times. And I think the end game, in my opinion, is, basically, if we can get to a place that, when people think of crypto, actually, when people think of investing, whether that's crypto or stocks or options or whatever, when they think of investing, they think of FTX. I think if and when we can get to that point, that will be that would be pretty awesome. So in my mind, that's kind of what one of the things I'd love to see us do.
And FTX US already has a lot of offerings. It has, like direct deposits from your employers. It has stocks. It has crypto. Obviously, it has spot margin. Might have stock options. It might have crypto derivatives soon. Out of all these things, are there any that you're particularly excited for or think could actually bring a lot of traction over time?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, outside of the US, futures are the way that people like to trade crypto. And I think for a number of reasons, I suspect that that'll probably be similar in the US once we can get once there's kind of a regulatory framework for it, which we're actively helping to try to get to. So I think that the future side is something that I'm particularly interested in. But more than that, I think it's the totality of being sort of, people talk about like a super app, or being a place where I don't want to have to go to 17 apps to do different things. I don't want to do my crypto over here, go over there to send money, to send fiat to my friend. And then, I got to send a check for whatever, I go somewhere else. Just give me one place that I can do that and I'm happy. That's kind of the thing that excites me a lot is the possibility of, if we can do that and if we can do that well, just make it easy for people to do finance and do all of their money things. That I think could be a lot of fun, and I believe that's kind of a direction we're going in.
Yeah, amen. That's really exciting. And now I want to go into something that I think is really cool and really exciting, which has been a lot of the work you've been doing with validating FTX by working with very, very, very well-known partners. Maybe, yeah, you can walk me through a little bit around sort of this mind shift change that FTX had that said, we want to work with these people who can help bring legitimacy to the company. And maybe kind of the progression there, who you worked with first and how that went.
Yeah, it's so much fun to reminisce on this. I mean, all credit to Sam here because he just asked one question in Slack one day. He's like, hey, do you think that we could get some athletes to tweet about, or just write about their experience using FTX maybe once a month? And he posed that to a group of people in one of our channels, and that was it. That was literally the start, right? And then from there, myself and a few other colleagues, we just sort of I don't know, fireworks went off in our head or something. We're like, whoa, maybe there's more that we could do here, and we just kind of started and ran with it from there. And then so I think the first deal that we did was actually the first sort of nationwide sort of national deal was with Barstool Sports, and then we did a deal with Trevor Lawrence, the #1 draft pick in the NFL, and then there was FTX Arena, and then everything else after that. And I think that the experience that I had with it was, it was definitely difficult at first to convince people to work with us, because one, they hadn't heard of FTX, and then two, crypto still was a little bit of this kind of taboo type of subject or something like that, or they were scared of it. So you have a double whammy of trying to tell people, no, don't worry about crypto, it's not scary. And then number two is FTX, you can trust us, we're good people. So that was really the challenge, was to get people to become comfortable with us. The interesting thing there was, once you sort of get the ball rolling, and once there's a few partners that are that have validated you, as you said, that word validation is, I think, very accurate. Then it becomes easier for others to be open to validating you. So FTX Arena, great example there. At the end of the process there, that Avi and a couple of other colleagues of ours worked on, the TLDR that you're left with is that the NBA trusts FTX for 19-year deals, right? And I think that's a great way to project the message that we want to get out there, which is we're trustworthy people, we're doing good business, and just kind of give us a look, come check us out. And this also, for me, it goes back to what Sam said many times, in that we're kind of a newcomer, right? So other crypto companies, they've been around perhaps for longer, and people have had more time to get to know them. So how do you sort of bridge that gap in terms of the amount of time that some other companies have been out there, and how do you do that quickly? You could put up a bunch of like Facebook ads, and you could do a lot of like other types of things like that. But then there's a whole other sort of intangible set of things that come into play when you work with somebody like a Tom Brady or a Steph Curry, that sort of gives a stronger message in a lot shorter time. And so it's been pretty fun to see that.
And actually, those are there's three people there that I want to talk a little bit more about, which is Tom, Giselle, and Steph Curry. Which they're obviously all three are just these massive characters, world renowned. How are the conversations? I think like Tom and Giselle were before Steph, if I'm correct. I'd love to hear how you got over kind of their trepidation of crypto, how you got them to feel that FTX was the people they wanted to work with. I mean, I'm sure it was a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wish there was like a movie about this, because there was, I mean, it was really an adventure, and in the best possible way. So first of all, I mean, guys like people like Tom and Giselle and Steph Curry, like they get pitched all the time for like things that people want to do with them. Excuse me. And you have to be able to stand out. And then once you stand out, you have to show them that it's a legitimate offering, right? So it was a lot of education, quite frankly, on the crypto side of things, and helping them to understand what crypto is actually about and what the promise of crypto is. And also a whole lot of listening, quite frankly, and trying to understand like what their concerns were, so that if I had a good response for them, or if I needed to go and do some research and get back to them, so that I could do that. Mm-hmm. So it was a whole lot of listening, and a whole lot of conversations, and ultimately it was a trust thing. It was just building trust, and for them to see that look at our story, look at the story of our founders, and look at what we're trying to do, and ultimately just getting people comfortable with that. It definitely there's an art and a science to that, but at the end of the day, we were able to show them that it was worth their while.
And how does it work for the people that are at that level? Is there agent that connects you with their agent who has like a higher up agent? Like what was the hierarchy that you had to go through to get to the point where you're talking with Tom, for example?
Yeah, typically there is sort of a hierarchy type of situation. Oftentimes, if you're able to leverage sort of personal networks, that's another thing that you can do. So in the case of Tom, I happen to have a teammate in college on the football team who later on went and won a couple Super Bowls with Tom. So they knew each other quite well. So there was like an implicit sort of trust factor there. But typically, yeah, you'll talk to the people that can get you in touch with their team, and whether that's their agent, whether that's their manager, whether that's their financial advisor, whatever the case may be. And then you have to sort of convince them that it's a worthwhile endeavor. And then after numerous rounds of conversations with them, if things get really far advanced, then you get to actually talk to the talent directly. And then then that's kind of in many cases the most potentially stressful part, which is like do they like you? Do they like the story? Do they see the value here? So it's a multi-step process. There's presentations along the way. There's lots of back and forth, lots of Q&A, lots of legal calls and regulatory questions. I mean it's the whole spectrum of like, imagine educating someone on everything in crypto, and then not just educating them, but like convincing them to put their reputation and their life, their name on the line, and basically put their, wrap themselves in your flag, or give you permission to wrap yourself in their flag, or vice versa. You're talking about people's reputation, and in many cases, that's their most guarded and their most valuable asset. And so it's a very personal and nuanced conversation that I think requires a tremendous amount of like empathy, because you have to understand what you're asking them really to do is to take a big risk with you, and in a very public way. So it's a very fascinating, very nuanced, and enjoyable, ultimately, sort of set of things that you have to do if it works.
And then, so let's say you get through the whole process, the people are excited to work with you as a company, and then there's some type of sort of term sheet on like how the arrangement works, and then you essentially from your role at FTX, do you have to then like, stay on top of all these different things that you have to do and work with the talent on? Because your job doesn't just end there, right? It's like a continual progression.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like that. That's to get to the starting line, and then once you're at the starting line, then you got to run. For us, I think what that looks like is two things. One is brand awareness and sort of just building our brand, and then two is like bringing people in the door. We want more volume, more users on the exchange. So these are kind of our two sort of mandates. Now, how do you do that? There's sort of strategy and tactics to each one. And so we'll run different campaigns. Like so in the case of Trevor Lawrence, we did a couple of social spots and other things initially. With Tom, Giselle, we filmed a television commercial or two. That by itself is a whole. That by itself could be like a mini series or mini documentary or something. Same thing with Stephen Curry. A whole lot of things with Major League Baseball. So it is a constant and ongoing puzzle of like, how do you tell the story of FTX? How do you craft the image of FTX via these partners that have tremendous reputations and a lot of recognition, and rightfully so, over the careers that they've built up and the accomplishments that they've had? How do we now leverage that in telling the story of FTX in an authentic way and in a fun and engaging way? So there's like unlimited sort of combinations and permutations of how that can be done. And then the other challenge is, well, because there's so many different ways you can do things, what do you do? Like, how do you sort of focus and simplify and just go with like one or two like impactful things? So there's a lot of different sort of variables to think about there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd be curious to hear what it takes to film a television commercial with somebody like this. Like, can you walk me through that?
Sure. I mean, you want Tom and
Yeah,
Giselle.
let's do the Tom and Giselle one.
Okay. I was hoping you'd ask me about Larry David too.
Oh
but,
yeah. Oh, actually, yeah. Yeah. Let's do Larry David. Actually, that's a Super Bowl ad.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the fact that it's a Super Bowl, right? I mean, that's like the pinnacle of like advertising, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess first of all, I mean, it starts with an amazing team, right? So I mean, I got to work extensively with Nathaniel Whitmore, our head of marketing, on that, and with him and a bunch of others, we sort of went after the concept of the ad. Well, let me take a step back. The first was like, do we want to do this, right? And so we had conversations with Sam, with Brett, like, what's our kind of feeling here? Once we arrived at the conclusion that, okay, yeah, people are feeling good about this, we kind of got the green light from Sam and Brett to go forward on this. And then Nathaniel and I basically just got to work. And so you go out, you get a list of agencies, and then how do you find that list? Well, if you have some priors yourself, great. But then if you have others that you've worked with, so for example, Tom and Giselle or Stefan and others, like, who do they like? You can sort of add them to the list. So we compiled this list of, I think it was like 10 or 12 agencies, and then had them sort of pitch us their best idea in terms of what a Super Bowl ad could look like. And we sort of whittled down the list, and we had one that really stood out to us, which was this concept that was produced by one of our agencies, that essentially said, let's get some guy that like travels through history and is kind of like skeptical about everything that he comes across. And then he kind of arrives at crypto and FTX and sort of makes a joke about that, and just have it be a comical, lighthearted, kind of funny thing that at the end of the day, simultaneously makes you want to learn more and makes you want to understand more about these guys. So that's kind of the initial phases. From there, once you sort of agree on that, then you got to go out and actually find the talent, and that's a whole other thing I can tell you about if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Larry David is just known to not do commercials and to be super hard to get for anything. So I want to hear how you were able to pull that off.
Yeah, so he had never done a commercial. The only thing he'd done was a public service announcement for like COVID stuff, and so there was kind of a multifaceted approach there. One was me pitching Larry directly, which was pretty surreal. I happen to be a massive fan of Larry David in general, and like probably the most intimidating person that I mean, like, even more than, honestly, like I wasn't scared talking to Tom or Giselle or Steph or anybody really. But Larry David, for me, I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, like this is like one of my idols. He's like one of the funniest people, like I think ever. And so to pitch him on doing a commercial for us was just wild. But I basically, laid out my case and I said, hey, Larry, listen, like, here's a little bit about us. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's the concept. And what do you think about it? And he liked the concept a lot. So, credit to our agency and credit to everyone on our side that helped like whittle this, the script into something that was enough to get Larry's attention. And then two, it still required some convincing because, again, crypto's a new thing still for many people. And Larry had never done anything like this, and he didn't know who the hell we are. So he had to get some validation, coming back to that word. And he was able to get that validation from another one of our partners that we had worked with. Over the years, one of the relationships that I was fortunate to develop for us and make happen, he was able to get validation from them that, yeah, these FTX guys, they're the real deal. They're legit. They're good people. They do good business. Like, yeah, totally happy working with them. And then Larry was like, okay, let's do this. So we got Larry. And then all of this was, again, just to get to the starting line. Now you actually got to film a thing. And now you got a film crew of like 126 people over the course of like 5-6 days of shooting. By the way, for a couple of weeks before that, getting the sets ready, getting all the permits in place, flying in the various different like talent, like organizing all the equipment that's needed. And then you got to manage the talent. You got to bring them in. You got to keep them happy. And then just getting people like food and water on set, like that's a whole thing. And then like with all the COVID things and, all the procedures there, it was literally a full-time job for, 100 and, call it 30 people for a number of weeks. And that was just to get it shot. And then you got to edit, and then you got to go back and sort of on the cutting room floor, chop it up and make it look the way you like. And then you got to fit it into 60 seconds. And then there's like, input along the way from the talent, from the director, from all kinds of other people. So it's a pretty involved thing. And then by the way, you got to get it on the network and you got to get it on television. And so there's a whole song and dance with like, the networks about, can you find a 60-second spot, which in our case, there actually was not a 60-second spot available. We had to get 2 different 30-second pieces and put them together at a time that turned out to be probably the best time that it could possibly have ran during the Super Bowl. Yeah, a lot of different vectors along the way, multi sort of factorial sort of thing. But at the end of the day, we're fortunate to have a great team on the FTX side, work with great partners on the agency side. And then Larry David is just fucking amazing. And he just crushed. So it was, and then I think it won several awards for like most comical Super Bowl commercial. And then like, I don't know.
There are like 50 million views on our YouTube channel from it. While you were describing all this, what I was envisioning? I was envisioning like the guy on the unicycle juggling 6 swords while balancing a ball on his head and like breathing fire or something.
Yeah,
so much shit.
And picture doing that while the crypto markets are like fluctuating, and you got to tell people, no, don't worry, it's okay. Like everything's fine. It's exciting in a way that it's hard to describe with words.
And something I'm curious too, like speaking of the talent, that now you've spent a good amount of time with Tom, with Giselle, with Steph Curry. What are these people like, and kind of just like day-to-day interactions when they're not thinking or they're not in work mode or in PR mode?
I love that question. I think that by far one of the biggest surprises that I've had in this process was learning, and not just learning, but observing how humble these people are. So before I had a chance to meet Stephen Curry, before I'd had a chance to meet, Tom and Giselle, I would have pictured them, quite honestly, to be different than they actually are. They're just larger than life, extremely accomplished, like just very prominent people that I would have pictured are sort of different. But when you talk to them and talk with their families and hang out and all this like kind of stuff, like they are deeply humble and deeply dedicated people. And so but the humility is the thing that really struck me. It's like, listen, this is, the winningest quarterback in the history of football. I honestly would not have been surprised if he was kind of a dick, but he's not. Like that. That's the cool thing, is that he's super down to earth. He's super like intellectually curious, wanting to learn about crypto and about like just about many, but just business generally. But super humble, down to earth. Same thing with Giselle. And we have Sam and myself spoke with Tom, Giselle, and their kids. And like they're a regular family that happens to be like really dedicated to doing their various different things in the sports, business, and entertainment world. But they're also deeply humble and deeply I would say family oriented. Similar thing with Stefan. Again, greatest 3-point shooter in basketball history. And at the same time, super down to earth and super just like chill kind of person, and like loves to play golf, loves to hang out with his family, and loves to learn about crypto and like new business type of things. They're also, by the way, across the board, really good listeners. And you get the sense that they're like absorbing a lot. Like when you talk to them, like if it's something they're not already familiar with, they're like actively absorbing and asking. That's the other thing. They ask really, really good questions. But again, end of the day, super humble, super straightforward, open-minded, dedicated, and driven people. Really just fun people to be around, I guess, is what it comes down to.
And I think for yourself, what's been the biggest difference since you've like kind of started hanging out more in these circles and with sort of people, as you were saying, who seem larger than life from when you see them from the outside?
I mean, it's a lot of fun. Having sort of gotten to know, a lot of the athletes and a lot of like the team owners, for example, the interesting thing is like it becomes like, previously I used to just be able to watch sports and enjoy it just for the spectacle of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, cool. Okay, here's my team, and okay, they're having a good game or whatever. Once you're like involved in the business side of it, like it's less about just watching for fun. Now it's like a business thing. You're watching with a whole different like lens. In some ways it becomes more stressful. You're like, oh gosh, like, okay, I know what's riding on this shot. I know what's riding on this pass, right? But in some ways it's also a lot more rewarding because you have more skin in the game. So it's almost like becoming kind of a super fan of sport and entertainment, and you sort of get to see it in a different light than if you're just a casual sort of observer. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just it's a deeply humbling and sort of rewarding type of thing at the same time. I mean, I've had to like, pass up on opportunities to have like dinner with like Tom and Giselle or something like that because I was busy doing something with like Stephen Curry or whatever. And it's like, this is so bizarre. And like, it's never, I would not have expected this when I got into crypto at all. But at the same time, super grateful for the opportunity to help do this stuff. And again, ultimately in the big picture of like trying to help craft the image of FTX, which is bringing crypto to more people. And at the same time, if we, if things go well, we're also helping to make the world a better place by, donating to the most effective charities that are out there. So like, it's a comprehensive feeling of, I guess, just gratitude for being able to be part of all of that.
Have you had to up your golf game a lot?
I love that you asked that. My golf game has improved from like probably the shittiest golfer in the history to like marginally passable to the point that when I hit the ball, it usually goes forward now. It still sometimes goes backwards, sometimes shanks up into the left. But I'm able to hold my own, and if nothing else, provide some good laughing material for the people that I golf with, because it's fucking hilarious how I golf.
That's super funny. I imagine everyone quite likes the golf. My last question for you, Sina, is there a life habit or a life lesson that has really stuck with you and helped you improve your life?
Yeah. It goes back to something that actually was talked about on another episode of the FTX podcast, one that you did with I believe Thomas from Jane Street, and he talked about intellectual humility. And this is something that for me has been at first sort of I didn't realize that this was kind of something that I was drawn to, and then later I realized that I'm sort of actively drawn to this type of thing, and that it's sort of this like open-mindedness to like, maybe I don't know the right answer, and maybe I'm not the smartest person. In fact, I'm probably almost certainly not the smartest person in the room, and that's actually a good thing, and it's probably something to embrace. Um, I'm reminded of a quote that I heard from this guy named John Kabat-Zinn, who's I think an MIT guy who's like invented this thing called MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. I think it's basically a type of meditation. And he was giving a talk at Google, which is a place where I was consulting a number of years ago, and I got to hear him talk about this. And he said, especially here in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of people that think that they know everything, or they think they are really, really, really smart. And he's like, a lot of these like Silicon Valley like CEOs and stuff like that you meet, like that's the impression that you get. And he's like, when I meet those types of people, I ask them two questions. And the first is, who are you? And I don't mean what's your name. I don't mean what's your title. I don't mean what do you do. I don't mean where you come from. I mean, who are you? And they usually are kind of like stunned and like confused by that. And then he's like, and while you're struggling with that question, let me ask you another one. Where are you? And I don't mean what city and state and all that. I mean, where is the universe physically located? And they're usually stunned with that question. They're like, they don't quite know how to answer it. He's like, okay, so let me get this straight. You don't know who you are, and you don't know where you are. And what was it that you wanted to tell me again? And so like that stayed with me. Like, I'm like, wow, okay. So like having that, what he talks about is beginner's mind, or like always feeling like I'm a beginner and trying to learn and absorb as much as I can in that context of like, just trying to have an open mind and be flexible in my sort of intellectual approach is something that has stayed with me, and hopefully has had some positive value, and hopefully will continue to have more.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast,
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.